Welcome to Rates and Barrels. It is Wednesday, September 3rd. Derek Van Riper, Eno Saris, Jed Lowry here with you on this episode. We have some odd happenings on the diamond from Tuesday. We had a pitcher throwing at his catcher, it appeared. We had a 120-mile-an-hour home run. We had benches clearing in Colorado after a first inning home run. That's pretty unusual. We got some injury news to get to. Then we got some big picture stuff. We have a plea to bring back expanded rosters. We want to go all the way back to 40. At least I do, and I'll explain why in just a little while. We're also going to talk about our viewing guide for September. We got the playoff races, what's the most compelling there, and if you were just kind of shopping for intriguing storylines beyond the playoffs, what is guiding your viewing decision as you flip between games this time of year. So, tons of ground to cover here, guys, and we're going to begin with what I think is the most bizarre story of all. Framber Valdez and his catcher, Cesár Salazar, not on the same page, to put it mildly, and things unraveled in the fifth inning against the Yankees on Tuesday night. Framber Valdez serving up a grand slam, an opposite field grand slam into the Crawford boxes to Trent Grisham, and if you are watching on YouTube, you may have noticed that before that pitch was thrown, you see Salazar waving to step off, trying to get Framber to step off before he throws that terrible sinker. After the grand slam, throws a changeup up and away, and then throws a fastball that hits Salazar right in the gear, like almost gets him below the gear too. And watching Valdez's reaction, it didn't look like it was an accident because there was no hand gesture of, hey, my bad, or tapping his ear like I couldn't hear the pitch come, or any sort of indication that it was an accident. So what do we think happened here? There's a story from Chandler Rome in The Athletic, and the way the story is written, it kind of comes out that it seems like Salazar is trying to clear the air and just take the high road and basically take some of the responsibility. But I still don't believe it, even after reading the story. I look at that and I'm saying, my eyes are telling me something a little bit different than what I'm reading in The Athletic here on Wednesday morning. Jed, what was your reaction when you saw that sequence?
Yeah, no, I think you're exactly right. I mean, and I think Salazar did a good job of handling it because that's just something that you don't need to become a distraction. They can handle that between themselves. Clearly, I mean, Framber's in the wrong on this one. I mean, you can't put you can't let your emotions get the best of you and potentially hurt a teammate. And whether you didn't like what happened or not, but you just can't let your emotions get the best of you. So I think Salazar did the right thing by keeping it in the clubhouse, not talking about it in the media. And Framber is in the wrong, whether he didn't like the sequence or not. You can't do stuff like that to jeopardize the health of your teammates.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of the wildest things. I told my family about it. It's like, I just saw something, and you see something in baseball all the time that you just never seen before. And I was like, I've never seen that before. Have you ever seen anything like that before, Jed?
I mean, I've seen not so blatantly that you are like seemingly trying to. I think he said that he just wanted to throw that pitch. That's the pitch he wanted to throw. But like, I don't know. There was just a look in his eye that made me think like, that there was something more. Like there was something, deeper emotional. Like he was upset with the guy, and I don't want to make too big of a deal of it. But no, I've never seen somebody do that. What appeared to be maliciously, to his own catcher.
And like I've talked to, a lot of players that stuff came out afterwards, or that people think are like obviously bad guys. And I try to always like see the humanity in people, I'm always like, but what if we're missing something? What if this is true? What if this is true? So, I did try to read this story being like, what if we're misunderstanding Framber here? And let's give him the most grace we can give him. And, he says he called for a curveball, but I already had in mind that I was going to throw a sinker. So that's what I threw. That's what happened, Framber said after the game to Chandler Rome and to other reporters. Now, all right, dude, like, I get it. You are a veteran. This is a rookie. Like, you wanted to call your pitch. Get a pitch comm then. Like, he says in the story he doesn't have a pitch comm. So you can't telepathically, you're not glove signing your pitch to your catcher. You're not telepathically telling him what you want to do. So you're just doing what you want to do, and the catcher has to like wait to be pelted by balls that are going in different directions. Like, that's not really fair. One part of the story that did make some sense to me was just that he has dealt with emotional issues and anger issues, and he actually has a there's a sports psychologist that works with him. And one part that I'm glad Chandler put it in there was just that, you know, that he's been coached to sort of walk off the mound. Like, when he's in these moments and he's overwhelmed emotionally, he's been coached to walk off the mound and react that way. So what we're seeing as indifference to his catcher could also be a coping mechanism for, you know, realizing he'd done something bad and like kind of being too emotional and trying to reframe and trying to recapture, you know, his normal feeling. And you mentioned the crowd being loud. He's probably angry that there's a bunch of Yankee fans there. Angry that it's not going as well. Like, he's supposed to, there's like Chandler set this up as like Max Fried versus Framber. Like, Max Fried got the $220 million. Framber wants the $220 million, you know? So, and then there's like longtime Yankee Astro ill will. So like, I'm trying to give him as much grace as I can, and all I can come up with was like he got overly emotional. He did something bad. That's the best I can come up with.
Yeah, and that's my point, right? Like, I think that you have to be in control of your emotions, because now, like, there's no greater relationship built on trust in baseball is the catcher pitcher relationship. And they've only played together twice, right? Like, that was the second time that Salazar's caught him. But just fundamental trust of, when I put the fingers down and you agree or you start your motion, we're on the same page. Like, that fundamental trust, that's got to be shaken. So like, whether or not his reaction was his coping mechanism or indifference, to me, that it almost doesn't matter, because when you start your motion, you have to throw the pitch that the catcher calls or that you guys have agreed on. Otherwise, you're putting somebody in danger.
Putting him in danger. Yeah.
And then on top of that, like, you know, how now if we're going to look at Salazar blocking pitches, right? Like, now this affects him personally, because he might not trust what Framber is going to call or throw when he calls it. Now, all of a sudden, you know, he's second guessing every single time. Like, his instincts.
Framing requires blocking, knowing like where that pitch is going.
Yeah. And the movement profile.
Yeah. Yeah, I find this fascinating from this standpoint. And also, you know, we've been talking about makeup on the show and stuff. And if you are about to hand out a bunch of money to this player, like, this was something that's going to come up in the meeting where you're like, okay, we're about to give Framber Valdez $200 million. Like,
yep.
How do we feel about his makeup in this situation? What happens in the future? What do we, at the very least, what do we do to get in front of this? Like, how do we get in front of this, and how do we give him a landing space where he doesn't act like this? Do we give him a personal catcher, like figure out somebody that he's cool with, you know? But
a personal catcher for 6 years, though, you know, right, like whatever his deal ends up being.
That's tough. Yeah. As producer Brian just pointed out to us, I mean, that other start that Salazar caught for Framber, 7 scoreless, 5 Ks, 3 hits, and a win over Colorado. That went well. So I think it was just the circumstances, and having read Chandler's story and thinking about the emotional highs and issues that Framber's been trying to work through. It makes more sense that it happened, but I couldn't quite figure out what exactly in that game got him so upset in that particular instance. If it was the bad pitch or something earlier in the game, the home run he gave earlier, maybe he was still carrying that with him. It's really hard to say.
The step off thing actually sounds like the almost exact same thing that happened when they got crossed up, which was that, that the catcher thought a curveball was coming, and he probably got no sort of,
he just couldn't tell. He didn't know what was coming. So he's like, hey, no, let's just just disengage,
Start
step
over.
off.
Yeah,
you got one.
yeah.
Let's just go through it again and we'll get it. So
I mean, that is rough, dude. You're just throwing balls at a guy, dude.
hopefully it sounds like after the closed door meeting with manager Joe Espada, apologies in the clubhouse, like maybe it's going to be behind them. Hopefully for the sake of the Astros, it's the last we hear of an incident like this. But to the makeup point, I mean, Framber was critical of defensive positioning early this year. He had a dust up with Yainer Diaz last year. So there will be probably some questions about this as teams consider giving him the bag in free agency. He's got great results. Just the question of what you're going to get day to day around all of that. Tempers were flaring in Colorado, and I think Jed's a great resource for us in an instance like this because I watched this home run and I see nothing out of the ordinary. It's a moonshot.
I mean,
it's
he's staring at it.
Very high home run. He's watching it, but there's no egregious bat flip, which I have no problem with anyway. He doesn't stare at the pitcher after he hits it, but as you can see, as he gets down the line, Kyle Freeland starts chirping at Rafael Devers, bench is clear. There were some ejections here. Willy Adames and Matt Chapman both end up getting tossed. I mean, I didn't see anything that warranted Kyle Freeland having a meltdown, especially since this was in the first inning of a game, Jed. What happened here?
Yeah, and if the videos, the clips that I saw on social media too were Freeland was really the one that initiated it. I mean, Rafi Devers is looking at it. He's, posing. He gives a little bat flip, gets into his trot, and all of a sudden Freeland starts chirping at him. So Freeland is the one that initiated it. He obviously didn't like, Devers' reaction to the swing and to the home run trot and the posing. But I just gotta believe that there's a lot of pent up frustration in Freeland's reaction there. Cause it's one of the, in terms of a pimp job, that's as like benign as it gets. I mean, he looked at it for a couple seconds, started trotting, gave a little flip. And I don't even think that like in this world, if we were talking 20, 30 years ago, I don't know. So even if you watch some of these old videos, these guys are tossing bats in the air, got their little shimmies when they're running around the bases. I just don't see this.
The 80s happened.
Oh my God. I like, you see these clips. Exactly. And, now we're like, let the kids play. I think that this is like a 1 out of 10 on the scale of egregious home run celebrations. And
I would have been.
I attribute it to just this pent up frustration with Kyle Freeland and his emotions, all of that just boiled over.
Yeah. I mean,
lost number 100, right?
Right. Lost number 100 on the season. Again, like maybe it wasn't the actual thing that Devers did, which appears to be almost nothing out of the ordinary on a homer. It was a series of things that we just don't know about that often explains why players kind of erupt at the various times that they do. But tempers were hot in Colorado. That was more of a Springsteen situation again, as Britt Giroli likes to call it. Benches cleared, everyone got out on the grass. Didn't really turn into a complete melee, even though there were a few ejections. I don't think there's going to be any suspensions off of that, right? Like, that didn't look like a suspension situation anywhere in there. My favorite part of that, by the way, if you watch the clip, is Warming Bernabel just slowly, like last guy in out of the dugout, just like, why are we doing this? This is not worth being upset about. Why are we going to risk getting
And once again,
punched?
top of the first inning.
Yeah.
Top of the first inning. Oh my gosh. Right?
Yeah, producer Brian is asking if it's the shortest start for a pitcher ever. A quick Google search tells me that Dylan Covey was pulled after giving up 5 runs on just 14 pitches in 2019. So it's possible it's one of the shortest starts ever. Also, like, I don't know that I've seen a fight erupt before the guy even got to home. Like, it was in the middle. Like, he was at, like, first
didn't even get to
base.
first.
He was
Didn't even
30,
get to
30
first.
feet, 40 feet up the line, and it was already...
I guess, like, yeah, on like hit by pitches, like the guy doesn't even get to first. Sometimes he just charges the mound. So that wasn't the quickest fight ever, but it was weird because it seemed like, no big deal. And then all of a sudden, that was like, I don't know. The fight part was like almost legit. Like there were people pushing each other a little bit.
It got close. It got close to some actual legit hands being thrown.
Not Johnny Cueto up against the wall, but like. Yeah.
I as I think about this, I would love to see his actual trot after they cleared the field, right? Because he had to complete all the bases. So they had to clear the field, and then he had to run to home after that.
Yeah, we just talked about the Mike Morse fake home runs.
Yeah, the Mike Morse one we talked about yesterday. We'll have a YouTube short, I think, that features that coming up shortly. That one's the weirdest one, but it was like an 8-minute delay, I think, before Devers actually got to finish the home run trot before they got everything all cleared up.
Yeah.
So you can add that to our list of weird homers that we were talking about on the
I would
show
go
on
so
Tuesday.
slow, I think.
You milk it,
crawling home.
Come on. Nah, you'd run them like you've hit a home run before. That's how you play it. And Shohei heard us talking about all the weird is good. Let's see some unusual homers. Look at this one. Bubba Chandler throws a 99-mile-an-hour fastball down and in.
Gone so fast.
And like 2.5 seconds later, it smashes into the bleachers in right field at PNC Park. And the reaction from the Dodgers dugout is great. Blake Snell's like, oh man, that is scary as a pitcher to see that. Dalton Rushing's mind is blown because I don't think Dalton Rushing believed a human could hit a baseball 120 miles an hour, which is where most of us were. And it was one of those high velo, massive exit velo homers that like perfect storm sort of thing, right pitch, right location, right guy swinging the bat, anticipating the pitch he was going to get. And wow, I mean, like, I don't even know what else to say, but it's in the weird homer club because that one somehow got up above 20 degrees. I think that was like a 23, 24 degree homer. I don't believe it, but I guess that is a higher wall out in right field at PNC. So I guess that's the only way the math works.
14 degrees. It was even shallower. But what's hard for me to believe is this is the first homer over 119 Shohei Ohtani has ever hit. He's just joined the 119 club. The 119 club has 13 homers in it. Giancarlo Stanton has hit 6 of them.
he's got about half of them, probably. Yeah, not surprising.
Judge has 2. Manny Machado has 1. Ronald Acuna Jr. has 1. O'Neal Cruz has 1. And Ellie De La Cruz has 1. So
there are 0 surprises in that list. There is not a single name you said there that was like, oh, I was like, nope, those are all names I would expect to be in that club.
Yeah, you're not surprising anybody when you're hitting 120. Like you have you're not going to have a max EV of 110 through the course of the year and then just rip off a 120.
Yeah, I wonder. We should.
But it does say something about there's something about I've heard that your max EV is going to be more at like a line drive level, because you're imparting 100% of your force into the ball. So there's no, like, fly balls are almost mishit a little bit, because you're kind of getting under them a little bit.
Back.
So it is really, so like getting 120 up in the air suggests that you can hit it 125, I think. You know what I mean? Like that you don't normally max out on a fly ball.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I've never thought about it that way. I just, my whole philosophy, just hit the ball hard, right? Like hit the ball hard, hit it as hard as you can. And, it's just a matter of, stay like you watch that swing. That looks like an easy swing. Shohei is not falling down. He's on balance. Like he just, I mean, look at that. I mean, that is, if, I might, ask you to send me this clip DVR so I can show, like, that is a 120 mile an hour ball where he is completely in control of his body, right? Like he's not falling down. He's like that is the perfect example of what every single hitter should be trying to do. Just hit the ball as hard as you can while staying under control.
Yeah, you're right. That's not a corkscrewing himself into the ground type swing that generated that 120. It's very impressive from Shohei Ohtani. I saw the Bubba Chandler reaction in there too. Like, ooh, it's tough up here.
Welcome to the big leagues, Rook.
I'm happy to be here, but this is a much more difficult place to be, and AAA wasn't easy. So you got that going for you. Let's stay in the NL West. Some other breaking news. Lourdes Gurriel Jr.'s season is over with a torn ACL. I kind of want to just use this as more of a segue to explore what should be an unusual offseason for the Diamondbacks. And I think it's going to be unusual because they have had a ton of injuries this year. They were sellers of the trade deadline. Like Merrill Kelly's already gone. Zach Gallen's a pending free agent coming off of what's going to be a down year, I think, even if he finishes out strong. So they have multiple needs in the rotation, amplified by Corbin Burns having Tommy John surgery in June. And I don't think they have the type of near big league ready reinforcements coming up to backfill all of their openings. And yet, because they've been more aggressively spending in the last couple of winters, I don't think they've got the financial flexibility to go out and plug holes in free agency. So I think we're talking about a team that will be pretty exciting on the trade front if they're going to be active. And I couldn't quite come up with an obvious plan for what I think Mike Hazen and company are going to do. But how do you think Arizona might approach this offseason as a team whose window still appears to be open, but everything just went so wrong for them health-wise this year? I think it's maybe skewed perception of what they've got in that core.
They're hurting all of a sudden. I don't understand this. Like, it's so weird. They're not going to have Corbin Burns. They're not going to have Justin Martinez. Did AJ Puck have Tommy John too?
Man, he had a long absence. I don't know if he finally had Tommy John, but it looked
he
like
had
he was
Tommy John, dude.
Yeah.
Their two closers had Tommy John. Their ace had Tommy John, and one of their outfielders had ACL. Like, that's the worst combination of things because now they need to rebuild their bullpen and their starting rotation and get a bat. Like, I almost think they take a step back on purpose.
A quick reboot, kind of.
And I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe the Ketel Marte stuff that we were talking about was actually laying the groundwork for a Ketel Marte trade because who is the guy that you can trade here? I mean, could you trade Perdomo and install Lawler? Like, who gets you something back is my question, right? Like, Brandon Pfaadt signed to a long deal, but I think you actually need him, when you want to make this like a quick rebuild, like not like we're not going into a deep 6-year rebuild. We're going like, can we reload somehow? And when you reload, you usually trade somebody who's on a free agent deal that still has some surplus value. And I just don't see that. It's like there's Perdomo, yes. Eduardo Rodriguez would be a salary dump at this point. You're not trading Corbin Burns in the middle of that. That just doesn't even make any sense. I mean, what are you trading? Like, or do you trade somebody that you think that other people might think is better than you think? So you trade like a Ryan Nelson and Alec Thomas,
controllable players that are, that's interesting.
And I mean, Gallen, he's. I know it's not the best year he's ever had, but I got to assume he's a qualifying offer guy. What do you think, or no?
I think if you're them, you're fine.
I think he is.
You're fine if he accepts it. So you go ahead because you have the need. You maybe that limits what else you can do. Maybe that is your only spending you can do. But I think you need the draft pick compensation.
I think they have like 40 or 50 million. I just think they have too many problems to solve with 40 million. I'm doing some quick math, looking at it's 211 for the luxury tax this year. I think after arbitration and everything, they're at like 160 or so. So they might have $50 million. But $50 million doesn't go that far these days. Like, not when you need a closer, an outfielder, and a starting pitcher.
Yeah, I mean, $50 million can go a long ways if you're plugging 2 holes. If you're plugging 6, it's not going to go that far.
Yeah, I don't know. You're not trading Corbin Carroll. You're not probably trading any of the injured guys. So the question is, Perdomo or one of the other young guys. And if you're trading Nelson and or Thomas, I think you're doing it for win now. Actually, you would trade Nelson and Thomas for a more expensive starter who's better. But I don't see them doing that. Thomas, you could get probably similar stuff out of Jake McCarthy as Alec Thomas. I don't know if there's a lot of ceiling left. So maybe Thomas, but Thomas is not going to solve everything. So you trade Thomas for a package for like Sandy Alcantara or something. Take that money on. This is the win now idea, right? The win now idea is trade for a guy like Sandy Alcantara to pair with Brandon Pfaadt at the top of your rotation and Zach Gallen. That just seems like you're treading water. Like, is it a lot better? And then you hope that Corbin Burns comes back and
And you're still in a division with the Padres and the Dodgers, right? Like that's a you're pushing that ball uphill. And at this point too, the Giants have actually leapfrogged them in the in the standings, and we'll see what happens with the Giants, but they might have an opportunity to spend too. So if I'm a betting person at this point, they with all these injuries and them being sellers at the trade deadline, I could see a soft rebuild or a more than trying to go all in. And I don't know, maybe we have to understand Hazen's situation a little better too, right? Because if he's in a situation where his contract is expiring, like of course he's going to do everything he can to win.
Yeah,
right. That's true.
Right, and I think I would say Hazen and that front office have done a good job overall.
Absolutely,
to the point where you would, if your ownership, you're happy and you probably want to keep him and extend him. So
he's extended till 2028. It's actually
so there's buffer in there for that quick rebuild you described, where it's kind of like, hey, we're gonna. I think that path is more like we are going to trade Ketel Marte.
What's the quick rebuild plan? It is Ketel Marte, maybe.
It's trading Ketel Marte away, if only because you
for
worry
a big
about
package for something with young players, young pitchers.
I think you worry about his injury history because he's going to be 32 in October, and injuries generally don't go down as you get older. So it's been a mix of all different types of
would they
ailments.
Trade with the Giants? Would they take some Giants young pitching and
maybe? But I think that's the most likely thing you can trade, most likely player you can trade that doesn't completely go into deep rebuild, but actually gives you the impact you want in the form of multiple near big league ready or multiple big league players back that can help round out your roster. I think that's probably the sweet spot.
I'm just imagining a clubhouse with Ketel Marte and Rafael Devers in it. And I just remembering all the old Giants clubhouses that were so boring, like no drama. This would be very different, I think.
Well,
maybe Buster thinks the aura of the Giants can withstand that, but that would be. Hey, I'm here. I'd be in that clubhouse. I'll sign up for it.
So I wanted to ask you guys, what guides your viewing choices in September outside of the playoff chases? In our meeting yesterday, you made it seem like the playoff field is set on the second day of September, and I don't think I agree with that. I think there's a lot that could still change, at least in terms of where everybody is seated, which matters. Teams having a bye or not having a bye. I think that alone is a big deal in the playoff picture. But why do you think it's all settled?
Well, you listed it as my existential dread on the rundown, and I guess it's because I can't put my arms around any of the people who are not in the playoffs right now and say this team is going to come and take it. You know what I mean? The teams that are just out of it right now in the NL are the Reds, who are one game above 500 and seem to be that kind of a team. The Giants, who are one game above 500, and we've been calling a 500 team all year. So I don't see. Maybe the Reds could push, but the Mets all of a sudden look a lot better. And offensively, the Mets have taken off recently. And they've just called up a bunch of pitchers, and pitching was their problem. So I kind of feel like they're going to sort a bunch of stuff out, and they're just going to put a lot of distance in between them. So I don't think anybody who's not in the playoffs is getting into the playoffs right now in the NL. And on the AL side, the people who are out of the playoffs, the closest are the Rangers, who are close to the Mariners. So it's a little bit different in the American League. However, I don't really want to embrace the Rangers as a big possible surging team because they've been hurt by some key injuries. They're a bit of a flawed team. And I mean, Wyatt Langford is getting sort of white hot, and Jake DeGrom is still healthy. So anything can happen. I guess that's what I would circle is the American League West as the place of entropy. That's the place where things can happen. But you're right. I guess there could be some sorting out. But even among the division winners, like I kind of see the guys at the top of the divisions right now as staying there. So that's where this came from. Is just like me being like, I think this is it, guys. I think this is getting in. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I think to your point with the Rangers, you got Eovaldi down now. Adolis, there was something that's saying they're holding off on placing him on the IL. But just the fact that, there's something that they even have to consider putting him on the IL is concerning.
Simeon's out for the rest of the year, probably.
Yeah, Marcus is likely. I mean, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. Like, you start messing with that Liz Frank, and I know there's some concern about it. I think it's he's going to manage it well. But you just can't push those things. So I would probably view his season as being done. But who knows? Marcus is he's a grinder, man. Like, that guy, he wants to be on the field. This is his second time on the IL in his career. So I know he's going to do everything he can to get back on the field. And a lot will probably be determined where they are 2.5, 3 weeks from now. The Royals are 2.5 games back of the Mariners. We know what we're getting with the Royals, like a team that is not going to hit a ton, but not going to give up a lot of runs. So, I mean, it's kind of the Mariners' spot to lose in my estimation.
And to answer, I guess the titular question, as it may be, I've been watching the Mariners a little bit.
Yeah,
because I feel like they're kind of a linchpin of at least the American League playoffs.
Agreed.
They're also mercurial.
Yes.
They seem to like score all the runs and then score none of the runs, and then they also have very good pitching, and I enjoy watching pitching. So I've been enjoying watching Brian Wu yesterday and Logan Gilbert. I like Bryce Miller, so I like all of their starting pitchers and a bunch of their relievers. So, it's fun to watch them and see where they're going to go, because they could go anywhere from winning the division to being out of the playoffs. And that's I think the most interesting single team. The other team that I watch, I think in the NL, that's kind of on a similar pathway as the Padres. I think the Padres are in. It's not as much that they'll fall out, but they also haven't really done it. Like, they don't have a World Series win. The Mariners don't either. So there's something to watch, like a team that's never done it before, that could possibly, if everything falls into the right place, this could be the beginning of that story that you watch on ESPN, how the Mariners finally won it all, So I want to be part of that story. If that's the story that happens, that could be one of the most compelling stories in the playoffs.
Yeah, I find myself gravitating toward those teams on the West Coast the most right now for the same kinds of reasons. I think the booths for both are good. I mean, I think by now the Padres booth, Orsillo and Grant, is one of the best in the league. It's easy to just tune in. Even if the Padres are bad, which they haven't been in the last few years, I'd still probably watch them. I mean, a disproportionate amount.
They're fun. It's
an A+ hang. It's just a good hang. Yeah. Like, it's a great background fodder if you're trying to do something else before you go to bed. Like, just a phenomenal job day to day in that booth, and they're having a good time doing it. But I do like the Mariners crews too. They rotate the analyst a lot more. I think it's a lot of Aaron Goldsmith now on play-by-play now that Dave Sims is gone, and I think that's part of it too. Like, I gravitate towards the booths that I like. There was a good choice in the series to start the week. There was a Mets-Tigers series. Monday's game was awesome, by the way. I had that game on in the afternoon. We were kind of texting back and forth about it. Like, the SNY Mets booth, solid booth. Like, one of the, you know what you're going to get going in. Tigers with Jason Benetti. The number of Tigers games I tune into now versus the pre-Benetti Tigers of just a couple of years ago.
Oh, man.
Massive difference. The Tigers were almost like a blind spot in my rotation, or I'd always watch the other booth. Now it's like,
they were pretty homer-y, right? Or was that there was also the White Sox? Was it?
Oh, yeah. You're going back to the Hawk Harrelson era for the White Sox?
He was one of the biggest homers.
Elite homer. I mean, like, to the point where at first when I started watching White Sox games with Hawk, it's like, this is awful. And then after a while, I was like, this is so uniquely bad. It's good. Like in my opinion, anyway. I was like, I actually kind of learned to embrace it, kind of in
like
the ways
the trash film that you're like, this is such a bad movie. It's good.
It's sort of like the cheesy John Sterling home run calls. The home run calls at first was like, oh, come on, dude. And then after a while, I'm like, how far can he take it? Like, what next level dad joke, grandpa joke, great grandpa joke home run call can he spin on there? And I just, I kind of got into it that way. But all that is to say, like, that's the other sort of tiebreaker. How much do I like the combo of people in the booth covering?
I've been listening to games while I run, and so there's all this like radio booth has been opening up to me, as a thing, and the Padres radio booth with Jesse Agler is kind of a different feel. Jesse Agler and Tony Gwynn Jr. Are a little bit more on the kind of exploration of like topics and ideas side of things, where they are talking about stuff that's analytics based, but also just the mechanics of how you steal bases and how things happen on the field. They take a question every game, and the questions end up being pretty smart, and they have really smart answers to it. And Gwynn's experience as a player factors in, but then Jesse does a lot of reading of stuff around the league and brings that to the table. So, that's the Boog kind of thing on the TV side with the Cubs, where they are always reading and out there thinking about baseball, and they bring a sort of, I want to teach you about the game kind of aspect to it. That's, I think, one way of watching that I really enjoy. That's a little bit different than the Orsillo and Grant booth that the Padres have. So there's multiple different ways to be good, but that is definitely part of it. And one of the last things that I do, it's almost just because I have to, but rookie pitchers. If there's a debut happening, even some of the small sample rookie guys, like I'm still watching Cam Schlittler to see, what he's going to do with that sinker, if he's going to really separate it out, if he's going to have two different fastballs, if he can really command his breaking balls down. Really enjoy that. I'm watching Nolan McLean to see what he does against lefties, and if he, kind of that approach against lefties matures. I'm watching, I want to see why Mick Abel has struggled so badly with his first two starts with the Twins. Cade Cavalli's been up and down. So I watch these guys that are kind of on the cusp of becoming, dudes. And I want to see, what they do. Like start to start right now in a young player's career can be so amazing, where you're like, oh, wow, he just figured something out. Like a new pitch or like a new approach. And you're just like, that is going to work. And now you're a dude.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I agree with the young player, right? Especially on teams that are either out of it or it gives you a reason to tune in and watch those games. But as we were talking about the booth, as I've obviously transitioned to my post playing career, and I'm consuming the game through the broadcasts. I think the booth makes a big difference in the watchability of the game, like regardless of the product. Because I think about like Dallas Braden with the A's, for example. The A's are not going to make the playoffs. They're not, they're still a few years away from I think from being a playoff team. But Dallas Braden is good, and when I do watch those games and I listen to him, like I enjoy listening to Dallas Braden. And it makes it more watchable. I'm a huge Benetti fan. Like he is just his cadence, the way you can just tell there's such a deep appreciation for the game when he calls it,
and some good dry humor too.
Oh my god, the dry humor just kills me. I like I said, I would watch him call just about anything.
Proof that Jerry Reinsdorf just lives in a different orbit than the rest of us is that he let Jason Benetti get away as his TV play-by-play announcer. Like, that is just unbelievably shallow. Apparently Jerry doesn't think Jason Benetti's funny, which is like, well, everybody else likes him, so maybe you're the problem, Jerry. The other team, there's a couple teams I never watch though. I never watch their booth. The Royals, I don't even know if their announcers are good because there's something wrong with the sound. It literally sounds like there's a missing cable in their broadcast system. When you notice it, if you watch the recap rundown and they cut in TV audio for a Royals highlight, it sounds like AM radio, but then the actual radio call when they cut the radio announcer, and I think it's Denny Matthews is his name, legendary broadcaster there. He sounds better than the TV people, just from a technical perspective. And it blows my mind that that's what a major league broadcast sounds like. So Royals fans, if you're watching the TV feed and you got a good booth, you got to tell me because I go to the opposite side every single time if I need to turn a Royals game on. The Brewers crews are good, by the way. Like I think they do a great job.
Yeah, they're really good.
They rotate a lot of people because Brian Anderson does TBS and does basketball at different points in the year. But Jeff Levering kind of hops back and forth between TV and radio as the lead when Anderson's not on TV. They're good. Their analysts are really good.
I want to give some love to a surprise. Someone that might be surprising to some people listening. I kind of like John Kruk.
You like John Kruk?
Yeah, I do. He doesn't see baseball through the same lens that I do.
He does not.
No, but it's pretty funny. It reminds me a little bit of like Kevin Millar, where it's like we could hang out. Like I think we could have a good time. Like he laughs about it. He's not angry about it. Like Smoltz and I don't look at baseball exactly the same way, but Smoltz is a little bit more angry about it.
Yeah. You might not have as much fun hanging out with Smoltz as you would with Kruk. I think that's a fair assumption.
Kruk is a stream of consciousness, right?
Yeah, He'll just say things that you're like, I don't think you should have said that, or you know what I mean? Like you're like he'll say funny stuff. Dude. I wish I had better examples right off the top of my head, but I definitely he'll make me laugh. Like
there's plenty. There are plenty of like clips on social media of random things that Kruk says during a broadcast.
Yeah, I find that enjoyable.
I miss the old nerd scores that Carson Sestouli invented years ago at Fangraphs, and it's basically it's a combination of factors. So in their definition, devised originally in response to a challenge issued by sabermetric nobleman Rob Nyer and expanded at the request of nobody. Nerd scores represent an attempt to summarize in one number on a scale of 0 to 10 the likely aesthetic appeal or watchability for the learned fan of a player or team or game. So every day it would spit out numbers of like how watchable on that criteria games were, and then they had the reader's preferred broadcast between TV and radio for each option that you'd have for that game. It was a great viewing guide for what should I watch and why.
Very much enjoyed by very few people.
Yes, but that's the whole point. I think your other point though about your young pitchers debuting, that's definitely an easy it's kind of a checklist concept. Want to see these guys, want to get a look at some players, and maybe this particular game has no playoff implications, but it does have implications for 2026. Learning more about who these players are, fantasy or otherwise. I think that's always a fun thing to watch. You guys got anybody that
sometimes like a team that's playing a little better that's bad, like the Pirates, like you want to watch and be like, why are they playing better? Like, is this something that like next year I could be like, I mean, yes, a lot of it has to do with work, right? So on some level, I'm like, next year, do I want to say that the Pirates are a hot team? Do I want to do a bold prediction that the Pirates make the playoffs? Do I believe that Don Kelly's turning this around, or is it just sort of a trick of the schedule where they played worse teams and, they couldn't be worse than they were at the beginning of the season?
Yeah. And yes, but there's also the element of, playing more freely because you got nothing to lose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can definitely see that happen in clubhouses. I've watched the A's sort of go through their different cycles for so long that I'm like, oh yeah, this is tight. Like, the playoffs are coming. We're actually in it. Yeah, this is what it feels like in here.
Yep.
And this is like August in Oakland when like this. There's just like they used to have this little basketball hoop in Oakland that was like almost impossible to get the ball in because the ball they put it at a weird angle. You couldn't get enough arc, like it was too close to the ceiling, and like when the team was good, nobody was really screwing around with it. But when the team was bad and it was August, there was a lot of action over there. Just people trying to dunk it, alley-oop it, like That was,
trying to stay sane, and it's a long year, and I that's what I say, like the emotion of that, like when you're showing up to the ballpark in September pushing for a playoff spot, even in late August, it's a different feeling, it's a different focus level, and so these young players that don't have that experience, they come up. Like I said, you got nothing to lose. Like, let's go out and try to ruin somebody else's year.
Yeah, embracing that seems important to get through the final month plus of the season for
and I'm not
clubs.
I'm not sure I'm not sure that's applicable to the next year, right? Where to your point, if a team is hot that's out of it at the end of the year, I'm not reading too much into next year's, performance, because there's just when you're not playing for anything and there's really nothing on the line, you're not getting you're getting a good, window into what the player is going to be, but it's not going to be something that I would put on a move forward basis in terms of, is this team ready to compete for a playoff spot?
Yeah, I mean, like, another way of putting it, just specifically about the Pirates, is, as I've been watching them some, I'm like, yeah, I mean, the pitching is still good, right?
Sure.
The hitting is still a problem,
Yeah.
and, I can be like, well, I like Jared Triolo a little bit, and it's like, okay, congratulations, you like one hitter on the team next year a lot, and then two other players a little. All right, so is that the team that you're going to put on blast next year, is like, this is the hot team,
and some of those guys, they're fighting for their jobs too, right? So like, it just it becomes far more individual and individual based, as opposed to doing what it takes to win games.
There's the other aspect of late season baseball that I missed, that I wanted to bring up, because we talked about roster expansion on Tuesday. It's 2 new players added to the roster, 28-man rosters in September. It used to be the full 40-man, and I hadn't thought about a particular group. There's the group of players on the 40-man, the older guys that were basically going to get their first and sometimes only shot in the big leagues during the roster expansion window. Our friend Joe Sheehan wrote about it in his newsletter earlier this week, and it's basically like the cup of coffee players. Like, those guys don't get chances as often now, with the rosters being a little smaller. So there was always that good story aspect of it, or there'd be even some more late debuts. And I feel like those start to fade away too, because you got to be on the roster by September 1st to be eligible for the postseason, barring an exemption. League doesn't hand out a lot of those. So I don't know. Like, I think the expanded rosters were generally good. And my reason for it, beyond the good stories, Jed, was that I think it gave teams a chance to preserve fatigued players more for October. You could afford to give a couple more days off, standings situation permitting as well. And
Sure.
I think that gives you a little higher quality in October up and down your roster if you can take a little wear and tear off maybe some of your overworked bullpen arms, or even some of your regular position players, by having larger rosters. I understand there's a few reasons why it doesn't happen. I think there's a pay component, so like,
Sure.
more guys to pay. So owners are happier at 28 than at 40. There's part of it. There's the aesthetics of way too many pitchers being available and doing stuff like the Brewers used to do in Craig Timber, and just going wild with bullpen arms, and they did that really effectively. Some other teams did it too. So I know you don't want 4-hour games in September, but can you have a happy medium where the roster does expand to 40, and much like we have in, say, the NFL, you have inactives for a particular day. You say, okay, we're going to have 10 inactives or 12 inactives. We're going to get down to 28. We're going to say 28 players can be active for that night, but we're going to have them in the dugout around up and down for the remainder of the month. Like, would that be a happy medium that actually kind of ticks all the boxes and maybe gives us players a level of health that's just a little higher than we're getting right now when the calendar flips to October?
Yes, I think the player health argument is the most compelling one in that. And just to be clear, the 40-man roster in the previous CBA, you could have up to 40 men, right? That doesn't mean that every team had 40. There were teams that, only called up a couple. There were teams that called up 10. It was probably as much a financial decision and a, roster decision. So I do like the new format where everybody has the same number of players on the team. And so to your point about inactives or maybe bumping it up to 30 in September, to provide a bigger buffer to allow the star players to be healthier going into the postseason. I agree with that. I think there's something very compelling in that argument. So I would love to see, maybe move it up to 30, or if it's 28 and you have a handful of guys that are inactive, that every day you could add to the active roster just for player health.
Taxi squad or something.
Something.
Yep.
I mean, I think there's also I think there's an aesthetic argument to be made for at least a couple more players, because we went through the list, and in terms of debuts or young players that are going to get a little bit of a look, the list is really short. We get sort of Sal Stewart with the Reds, Drew Romo, the catcher with the Rockies, maybe Nick York, Kevin Alcantara with the Cubs. I mean, we're talking about Harry Ford. I think we're talking about less than 10 players.
Yeah, maybe a half dozen out of 30.
Yeah, across the big leagues that otherwise it was all just went to an extra reliever and like an extra infielder, and usually somebody that's already been around for a while. So I think if you gave every team another 2 spots, you bump that number up to 20 young players or 15 to 20 young players, where now almost every team has there's a young player for you to look at, especially the teams that aren't any good.
So the fatigue question, I think about it mostly with the bullpens, if only because that was probably the area of the roster that became the most malleable under the old rules. How concerned should we be, about bullpen fatigue piling up over maybe the second half of the season or September specifically? Or is it even just the cumulative wear and tear of the full season that actually causes relievers to fade at maybe the most important time of the year?
Well, before the season, one of my bold predictions was actually that the Phillies would have the best pitching staff in baseball, and they do. And the reasoning for this was not only do they have a great starting staff, but they push their starters to go further and keep their bullpen fresher, in order for all of their pitchers to succeed better. And if you look at, what, who's used their bullpen the least over the full season, it's the Phillies. And so theoretically, they should have the freshest bullpen. That is linked to a piece where Louis Paulus pointed out that, actually Russell Carlton over at Baseball Prospectus pointed out every pitch makes you a little bit worse. Louis Paulus expanded that to show that keeping your bullpen fresh helps them. So here are the most used bullpens. On the full year, it's the Dodgers that among the contenders that are just blowing everybody. I mean, they're blowing everybody away in general. But it's the Dodgers that sort of they're the contender. The Brewers are fourth, and about 30 innings less than the Dodgers to give you a sense of scale. Then the Mets among contenders are up there, and then the Padres are the 10th most used. So you wouldn't be too worried about them, except in the last 30 days, the Padres are the contender that have used their bullpen the most. And they're, you watch their cast, and they'll talk about, no pitcher has gone 6 in however many days it is. And their starters are struggling a little bit. They lost Jason Adam. Now suddenly their bullpen looks overused. So I do think that while it is useful to kind of look at these things from an overall team perspective, it may be most useful to think about this from a player-to-player perspective, because there's been a lot of player movement and stuff. So if I'm talking about the last 30 days versus the full season of how they're being used, I'm missing that. For example, the Dodgers starting rotation is getting healthy, and the Dodgers bullpen has been just a carousel of different players. Yeah. So, just think about Ben Kasparius. Like when I'm talking about the Dodgers bullpen being overused, am I talking about Ben Kasparius? Because now all of a sudden Ben Kasparius looks really important for them in the postseason. And he's not overused, I don't think. He's probably fresh enough. I mean, we're talking about a starter that just went to the bullpen this year. So it is difficult to talk about things when you start talking about it more specifically with player to player. But I might not be as worried about the Dodgers being at the top of this list as I seem. I'm just more worried about who's healthy. But again, they have so many starters coming back that they're going to push. Like Emmett Sheehan might be in the bullpen for them, right? And like he'd be pretty good in the bullpen.
Yeah, and bullpen usage is, I think, mercurial is the word of the day today, because the bullpen usage is just one of these things in baseball. Everybody's got a different opinion on what's too much, or up downs in the bullpen. The
stuff we don't have access to. Like,
right? Yeah. Did you get hot and not pitch? Because that's not going to show up anywhere on the stat sheet. It's only going to be internally tracked.
Exactly. So these things are it's imperfect. Even if we go through all of these things, right? Like I took a bunch of notes on we were going to talk about the Dodgers, Brewers, Padres, and Mets, and these things are imperfect no matter what you do. And you look at just the Padres, for example, have the highest WAR of any other team in the in the big leagues, a 6.7 WAR. And you look at the innings pitched, they're 10th for inning pitch, but they have the most games, right? So that their relievers are being used in a lot of situations, but not as long. So does that mean that they're overworked because they've been in more games, or they're roughly middle of the pack for innings pitched? And then you look at their statistics down the board, like everything, fourth in home runs per 9 innings, sixth in Ks per 9 innings, first in WAR, first in FIP, right? So their bullpen looks really solid, but then all of a sudden you got Adam out of there, but they serendipitously added Mason Miller. So it's still a potent bullpen. It's one of these things, like every statistic that we have is about bullpen they're helpful, but they're incomplete because we don't have, as the public, access to up downs, getting hots, like how much they're actually being used.
I mean, I'm looking at since July 15th, the second half filter on Fangraphs, just looking at the Padres in particular, and I realized he got traded during that window, but Mason Miller, 13 and 2/3 innings. That's not heavy usage, right? That's reasonable. Robert Suarez is like 17 and 1/3 innings. That's not even, it's barely top 100 among relievers during that span. That seems pretty typical for a closer.
How about Morihone?
Yeah, they're using Morihone and Morgan and Yuki Matsui's. Like who are you putting those innings on, I think matters a lot. And then how heavily are you going to use those guys in leverage later spots on back-to-backs or 3 of 4s once you get to October? Like I look at what's happening with the Brewers right now. Aaron Ashby, tied for second actually in innings out of relievers in that same span. That's a heavy workload. I know he's got some years as a starter in his past, but how's he going to be feeling in October if that usage continues? Abner Uribe is getting heavily used. He's important for them, especially if the McGill injury lingers. So I think who you're using is probably the more pressing question this time of year, because I think as those guys continue to be leaned upon in high leverage, high stress situations with an increased frequency, with that cumulative wear and tear, that's where I feel like the command isn't as fine. I mean, the stuff starts to deteriorate, and that's where the strength that you had starts to get kind of washed away by time.
You also, until you get to the World Series, you're more chance of seeing like divisional opponents that they've seen you a lot. So if you're using Morihone a ton against the Dodgers, for example, and then you're up against the Dodgers, they've seen all his shapes, they've seen what he's done, and he's a little fatigued. I mean, this is for Morihone in particular. This is the most he's pitched. I mean, the next out he gets will be the most he's pitched in the major leagues. So And on top of that, 9 innings or so before he gets to October.
Yeah, and he's got playoff experience too. He's got 3-year playoff experience, and has had varying results. He had an outlier in 2022 where he There was a 4 earned run outing that kind of ballooned his playoff ERA to 8.64. So, like I said, you got a little bit of a mixed bag in terms of results for him already in the playoffs.
So I'd be interested. I talked to his pitching coach just specifically about what he's done differently this year, and he dropped his arm slot and changed some of his mechanics to be healthier, and to have more command. But what if the old mechanics start creeping in as you get tired?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Still some questions to be answered there. If you have some ideas about how you think bullpen fatigue should be measured this time of year and into the playoffs, drop us a line in our Discord. The episode discussions channel is probably the right place to send that. You can find us on Blue Sky. Eno is enoceris.bscout@social. I am dvr.bscout@social. Jed wisely sticking to Instagram, just Jed Lowry over there. Thanks to our producer, Brian Smith, for putting this episode together. That's going to do it for this episode of Rates and Barrels. We are back with you on Thursday.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.